Guys, I'm going to be short and sweet. I work with Barry Sherman, full disclosure. He's my boss and have been the happiest I've been in my life for the last 14 months working for him. I got exposed to him a few years ago as I was working at a development firm and he was owner's rep and project managing projects for them. He's 35 years into putting steel buildings up across self-storage, small bay flex, also builds some industrial hangars, not industrial hangars, airplane hangars and FBOs, fixed base of operations for airports around the country. Spent the first few years of his career as an architect, decided that he wanted to understand what it meant to actually build things instead of just design them. So for 20 years, he operated a GC firm, DCB, out of Denver, built that company to over 300 employees. I think they were licensed in 37 different states. Then decided that filing 37 tax returns wasn't a lot of fun and went to work as an owner's rep project management company. We also do quite a bit of development ourselves. So when it comes to understanding every side of picking a GC, there's just nobody that's been involved in more contracts going back and forth. I think he's reviewing 3 of them this weekend as we speak, can really understand some of the pluses and minuses of every different way of going about picking the right GC for your job. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Barry Sherman.
Wow. Yeah. Have you guys had this Thaddeus intro before? If you haven't, you just kind of sit back and smile a little bit. Well, thanks everyone. When Thad reminded me Monday that I was coming here Friday after a couple weeks of vacation, I was ill prepared, although I could probably just show up and wanted to chat with you all. So pleasure for those that are out there that I cannot see, and for those that I can, good morning. Based out of Denver, Colorado, and as Thad said, recovering architect and general contractor of now a little bit of over 3 decades in the industry. I started as an architect. I did my first self-storage in about 1990 as an architect. And a few years later, I found out that most of my fellow architects, with all due respect, didn't know how to build. So yes, I wanted to go buy a construction company, figure out how that worked. It was design build. I had 14 architects at one time on staff, and we traveled to 37 different states building. And over that time, yes, my hair started falling out because of the challenges that were related to it. So here I sat as an architect for a bit. That's part of an overall project that's running all the design and entitlements. And all of a sudden I'm on the construction side, everything from ensuring I got the right field team, the right superintendent, the whole team that's going to communicate with a client to ideally make that not a one and done, that client's going to want to come back over and over again. How to handle it with contracts, dealing with insurance, pay apps, banks, everything, the full cycle. And then, as Thad mentioned, about 15 years ago, I had finally said, hey, I think I did my tour of duty over 22 years of doing design, build, general contracting. I sold that back, started S3 Partners, and also another platform called Business Aviation Group, where we almost do the same thing. Instead of storing people's goods or boats and RVs or et cetera, we store aircraft around the country at targeted airports. We're building hangars around the country today. But I started S3 Partners to really be a full service kind of owner's rep and partly development side to help people that are out there in the industry and bringing them everything from helping them site select to diligence to entitlements through the entire design cycle to onboarding a contractor to assisting with the bank and then running all of construction administration, all the way to the point where we help with signage, unit numbers, we onboard third-party management companies, and now we've had enough time that we've been cycling projects. But Thaddeus invited me today, and I appreciate all this, to kind of talk about selecting the right contractor. And I can tell you today, we've got about 7 projects in the construction cycle today. And each of those projects that we have a slightly different approach to how we have bought construction, as I label it today. You know, it first starts with who we're working for and their approach and their history. If they've been an experienced developer and they like the hard bid approach, then we bring that methodology to the table. And I'm going to run through that here in a minute. Or we might have a client that has never done it, but they want to know their budget early on. Where's their numbers going to be right out of the gate? What should they expect? And how do we approach that? Because internally, we create a lot of budgets. We had enough database that we can create a budget for most people right off the bat on what they're going to build. But if we want some reassurance in the market to where we're going to build, how do we get someone that's local with the sub base that's bringing live numbers to us without overcommitting to that contractor early on? because you know how that relationship goes. How do you get something and utilize that accordingly? Now, by the way, I have a 6-page PowerPoint that I was going to pull up and walk through. I'm going to share that with everyone later if they want it, but I really want to talk through this versus trying to have you guys distracted with paper that shows up on the screen. Okay, but today we've got about 3 methods that we're helping people buy construction. Okay, we've got an early on process that once we get out of diligence and we're in some concept design, we may go try to select a contractor or 2 to help us on some preliminary pricing. It gets kind of this balance here because we want to bring that contractor on board, not maybe overcommit, but get some numbers. Or we want to commit and say, hey, we want to go ahead and use you, Mr. Contractor, Mrs. Contractor. How do we do this? And we take one approach where we negotiate terms up front, everyone. We get in there and try to understand how we can buy general conditions, set a fee, and lay out the business terms of the relationship early on, and then bring them in on a pre-construction standpoint to help us on scheduling, budgeting, etc. How do we keep the competitive side alive in that nature? And you can imagine when you go into a marketplace, and I've got one job right now in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where that client wanted 9 bidders on it. So we put together a set of drawings, and the completeness of that set of drawings is key. We launched it with an RFP. We did a pre-launch interview with every single contractor to ensure they got the set of drawings, they understood the scope, and they went out for 3 weeks approximately to bid the job. During that time, we had a set RFP where they turned in RFIs. We got them out to all the design team members. We ran that process. All the questions came back. We qualified it. We pushed it out all to the GCs. Today, this afternoon, 9 bids come in. And then we have to start analyzing those. And we will be doing that for 2 weeks with all the data. And you can imagine we're going to be using AI to scrub it, to create spreadsheets, and to shortlist everything we do. So we can get to a point that ideally we have a grouping of probably 3, hopefully not more than 4, that we're going to shortlist. Then we're going to prep questions for them. We're going to get those questions out. Then we're going to work into an interview piece. And I want to pause for a minute because when I was on the construction side, the amount of time it took to prepare a bid, the people power inside their office is no small piece. They've got to go out to so many subs. All the numbers come back in. They've got to qualify it. Then they've got to put together a package. So they've put a ton of energy and time ideally into that number and package that we're going to now shortlist to 3, put questions out, and then bring them to the table for an hour-and-a-half interview. Well, that's a big decision that's going to be made, okay, moving forward with that person over an hour-and-a-half and a bunch of data for the next 18 months of your life, right? So early on, our preference might be to start shortlisting a group of GCs during the design process and ensuring we know them. I can tell you today in most markets, we have a toolbox or a bench of GCs that we know that we're trying to utilize over and over again. We know their strengths, know their weaknesses, where they're going to be. And so we're not so surprised when we bring them to the table. But I'm describing to you right now more of what might be our standard quasi-hard bid approach. Drawings are done, solid drawings, an RFP, and the process I've just walked you through to the day that all the bids are coming in, analyzing, prepping, interviewing. Then when we get to the interview, think about this amongst anything. Whoever you've invited to the table GC-wise, you've looked at maybe their website. The AIA puts out a 305 that you can get into a lot of their detail. You can go through it. Do they have any lawsuits pending? What's their banking look like? And that's a tool you can use. But have you called their references? Have you walked one of their past job sites? I love walking a job site of a contractor I'm about to hire. I walk on right away, and in 10 minutes, you can see, is this someone you want to hire? Have you ever done it? Go out there. Is it a clean job site? Is the fence up? Where's the superintendent? Is he in the trailer or is he on the job site? What's the subs look like? Who's there? So there's so much that you can be had by making a phone call or making a job visit. And if you've never done it, it's something to consider. But we get to an interview and talk about an interview, and I'm just going to say this across the boards because each step of this process has so much to it. You show up in an interview, you give a GC an hour and a half, you tell them how they should prepare, questions they should talk about. I get through the minutia of don't show up and tell me about the 100 projects you've done and why you're so great. You bid this because you're qualified. We're going to get past that. We're going to talk about the job and how you're going to approach it. And really, I want to see who they show up with. I try to coach them. Don't just show up with the president of the company and he's going to talk the whole time, because that's not going to do it for me. I want to see maybe the leadership there who's going to be there if things get bad that I've got to call. But I want to see who the pre-construction person is, who the PM, ideally who the soup is, and I want to see how they interact, how they communicate, who's doing what, who's not doing what. I really want to see how they can talk about the project that they just spent the 3 weeks bidding. And the PM may not even know the project. Well, that's going to make a difference for me in the selection, because the pre-construction guy did the whole thing. But then he's got to turn it over to the PM and they don't even know the job. So there's so much preparation that can go into that piece in that interview. And even when we finish a short list of 3 interviews, either through a hard bid or negotiated, which I'm going to cover in a second, hopefully with enough time left, okay, we may have a second interview. We may have a third. We're going to take enough time to make sure we're comfortable with making a huge decision that, by the way, we think you are a GC that we want to move forward with. Because when we make that comment, then we go into a whole nother mode, everyone. We go into getting the contract ready. We try to make sure that everything we've talked about, we're going to put in a single instrument. We probably ideally want to have an attorney on board, by the way, for the legalese of the instrument. Ideally, this is either an AIA, maybe an AGC agreement. It may be a homegrown one the GC wants to use, and that's a lot more work. But we get into the instrument, we start working through the legalese and the business terms, a lot of review. That takes sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks to get through that piece, all the way up to the point we've got all the tools to start the job. Okay, so I'm describing this journey. I just kind of somewhat described the hard bid approach. Let's go back to the negotiated piece. I've got the guy who everyone has talked about. They're killing it. I've walked their job site. We really want to use them. Brand X. How do you go to work with them without going to a hard bid? I do believe, I lived design build for 20 some years. I do believe you can create a competitive environment by bringing on a GC who you believe is a great communicator, who has had success, all the things that checks the box. Bring them on board. Bring them on board early and start negotiating your business terms. You know, what is their fee going to be? How are they going to structure general conditions? How are you going to handle shared savings? Do they have a project management platform you like? Talk about the logs. Who's their committed people? And you do that early on and you build that relationship. You know, you start creating that everyone's on the same team. They're going to go to the market at some point and bid it to the 10 electricians, just like the 3 other generals are. Because you know what happens during the bidding process? The electrician has all the other general contractors out there and they're putting out a number. And typically they're putting out the same number. Sometimes they may have their favorite GC and they tighten up the number a little bit, or they have their unfavorite GC and they add more money to it. You never know, right? That game gets played like back and forth. But truly, if you've got the right GC and the structure and the process, that allows you to engage them earlier into the process. I want to know more about the schedule. I need to go out and do some potholing on the site. I need you to work on the electrical and the gas early on. So we just have a super efficient, strong start here, okay? So I've tried to outline a few things. And it sounds, after you've done it a while, it feels really intimidating at first. But once you've done this a handful of times, like I'm assuming most of you had, it becomes somewhat repetitive. You look for the lynch points in the process. I use this word, it's overused. It comes down to a lot of communication on my side. When I get on the phone or I get into a meeting with the owner, the contractors, the design team, I watch how people communicate. You know, because by the time we award that contract and we're into weekly OACs and we run really, you know, if I can hopefully handle an OAC meeting in 30 to an hour each week with the whole team, with the design team on every OAC meeting, we can cover a lot. We try to make sure the job is healthy. We've gone through numbers, through schedules. What's the problems? Has RFIs been answered? Have shop drawings been completed? That's part of our process each week. We also have a PM meeting by the week. Every week we have a separate PM meeting where we're just on the call with the PM and the soup, no one else. And it's just, how is that project? So you can't have enough touches. You just need them to be methodical, because we all get lost in meetings too. So it's trying to find who in the industry is the right GC you want, the approach that you want to buy construction. Do you want to negotiate, design, build? Do you want the hard bid approach? Then it's the process you're going to go through with each of those, the data, how you're going to ultimately get all the way to the contract. Okay. And then you're going to get into it. Because by the way, there's a leap of faith in there. You think you got everything in there, you got the bulletproof contract, but you're going to still have to nurture the relationship from the day they start to the day the CO is in hand or the final check's done. There is that journey that goes on. So when Thad came to me and said, can you talk about how to pick a GC? It's a pretty long, I could go on for a few hours, but the key components is you don't just send out a set of plans, get numbers back and take the low bid. If you do, take a deep breath and get ready for what could be a lot of challenges. Okay. You've got to be either as an owner, an owner's rep, your own job deep into the weeds. And again, we're trying to help owners out that may not have ever done this before, nor want to know everything about it. And that's our job. But a lot of you might be your own developer, but I'm going to really recommend you are heavily into the weeds at this process. It's the most critical time when design has been established the costs of how we're going to get in construction and go build these things and deliver them. So, all right, 17 minutes in. Can I take a breath and maybe open it up for questions? And what do you guys want to do? This is my first time on here today, so I don't even know how the show goes.
No, that was fantastic. You just taken a somewhat boring, systematic topic and made my blood flow a little bit. So I'm very excited. So one of the challenges I have that I'm always asked is, why do you stay in the same market, Cincinnati, Ohio? And I've always been a design build GC myself, right? And so one of the challenges I've always had is, how do I go in other markets and identify that team, right? And get the right general contractor. I'm a little bit of a hands-on, I like control of my process. And that's why I like to be able to walk my job sites. But if I'm going to scale, as you guys have across multiple markets, how do you do that in remote markets?
Yeah, there's a few scars that I've got for that, by the way. So I'm just going to start there. And I'm still learning every day, okay? Every day. But there's some basics that we're doing today. Today, we are probably in 12 different states today. Some we've already had known, parties in there. And so we're early on as we get into the design piece, we're already scoping who is the right groups there, who's building. By the way, we use our vendor base a ton. Think about the key vendors in our asset class that we're talking to. Who are you using? Let's do some introductions. And we're deploying that kind of communication early on and setting kind of the, as I call it, the bench to who that might be. And that takes a lot of work, Will. Once you get to kind of, okay, I've got 6 in there, and I got to start getting to know them. And early on, and depending, do I want to get someone on early? And if that's the case, then I'm trying to go out with what I might call an RFQ. And I'm putting something out to get to know people. I'm doing interviews. I'm wanting to get a sense of who's building, what's their sub base look like? How do they come to the conversation? So it's all about getting to know who you might be spending the next 2 years with. It's references, but beyond that, you're kind of going in blind to some certain markets. But ideally, this kind of network who we have on the screen today are the best people that can help kind of point, maybe you in the right direction.
I appreciate that. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Very good to see you. I met you many years ago at an SSA, and you were an icon then. Of course, you've been replaced by Thad now, but
yes.
So I was glad to hear you talk, just a comment and a question. Glad to hear you talk about, you can walk a site and tell if that's the contractor you want to use. If there's trash everywhere, if everybody is tracking mud, the site's never been stabilized, that's a guy that's not doing housekeeping. So that's a real tell. I wanted to ask you about a guaranteed max contracts or cost plus. It seems like if you do GMAX contracts, they're going to pad it to protect themselves. Cost plus, a little different. And then I'll just one more quick comment. Work with contractors who have a value add mindset.
Okay. Well, love that kind of thought, value add. If I don't have someone, it's that age old piece. I got a problem. Do I have solutions for you in the same conversation versus I just have a problem or I'm pointing fingers, right? But you just brought up contract type and there's an art to that. Today, I think, I've gone through the AIA, the AGCs, the DBIA, and then some homegrown contracts. I would say I'm seeing more the AIA today across the boards. It's a decent instrument that I have a lot of people that are wanting to work lump sum. And that's one piece. I'll just call it that. Here's a lump sum piece. And then there's a cost plus. And I can tell you, I'm always working in the GMP mode. Okay. I'm all about transparency. If I'm going to go to work, I'm first coming out of it with all of our clients' approaches with, I want to see transparency. Who's your low 3 electricians? Who are you going to use? Let's talk about it. I can tell right away on how well a contractor wants to communicate about hiding numbers. I'm going to give them a fair fee. I don't even think about the fee today. Okay, if someone's around 6% and they want to be at 6.5%, I may say, absolutely, let's go do it. But it's going to be complete transparency of every dollar. I'll pay you your 6.5. Let's make sure you're worth it. Okay. I'm not kicking a contractor to the curb on their fee anymore. I'm going to study the heck out of their general conditions. I've gone more towards a fixed fee general conditions with transparency of how they're breaking out their GCs. I want to see what's in their GCs day one. That's an exhibit in a contract day one, their breakdown, because we're going to have extra time. And I want to know how we quantify it so we don't get in a fight later. Today, I can tell you personally, we are doing cost plus a fee with a guaranteed max. I am putting LDs into every contract. It's a fair LD package. I have a grace period, 20 calendar days, sometimes 30, depending on the complexity of the job. I'm going to give a buffer before LDs kick in. LDs is not going to be a small number. It's not going to be a stupid number, but it'll never cover a developer's interests. It can vary based on a project type. On a typical storage, an LD per day is somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a day. It's 20 days of buffer. Some people will bring in a bonus, but rarely not. We'll have a shared savings clause. We do incentivize our GCs, probably sometime between 20 and 30% of the shared savings, and the rest goes back to the client. There wants to be a motivation for them to really do a good job. We're requiring a buyout log at the beginning of the job. It does a few things. It shows me that they have gotten into the job and bought out the job within 45 days. I see the log. Are the contracts there? What have they bought out? Typically, you hope there's some savings in their buyout that's going to apply to the contingency that we've built in, if they have a contingency, and we're going to gauge that. Full transparency on the project, open book. Dave, so I can go on that. There's a lot of things in there. We can talk about weather protection. There's other things in the instrument that we can turn dials on to create, let's say, the perfect environment for the relationship between the owner and the GC. That was a long answer, Dave. Hope that got you something.
Your process sounds like you could be building a high rise in Manhattan and not 21 flex units. But
I don't know. I don't want that, by the way, but it may be repetitive per floor, right? It's going up. I got a set of restrooms, set of stairs, and it's just a floor. So there is some commonality to that. I appreciate your listening to me ramble.
I will say, I'm one of the younger guys, and Will, I appreciate you posting more about the school group. Barry, just hearing you talk about all this, I made a post of like, I might be looking to develop my first project, and hearing you speak, I'm like, well, I probably got in a little over my head. So probably need to take some more time to learn the ins and outs of this before I try to plan that.
No, surround yourself with all the right people. There's us, there's other people like us out there. I don't think you got to wait. Just get smart people around you. I'm still doing it today, by the way. I got Thad on the team. I got Kristen on the team. You can go do it. Just take the time. Put the people around you.
You're in the right community. Ask a lot of questions. There's some great people in this base camp community that will help you out for sure.
Colton, I've had the same feeling as you listening to Barry. I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm in over my head. And I'm like, wait, I've done 3 of these already. I'm okay. So, Colton, go do it. Just take the wisdom in. Barry's saying some great things. Will spot on, soak it in, but don't be afraid to do it on your first one.
I was like, yeah, how hard could it be? A metal building, but hearing all the complexities to it, but I'm sure that's it too. Like, you go through life, you get burned a couple times, you learn and develop that process later on. So, it just doesn't happen again, because if it gets bigger, the problems get bigger too.
Yeah, I can't wait for Will's session where it's all about what's gone wrong.
I can write a book on that.
What's gone wrong so you never do that again, okay?
Right.
That better be more than 30 minutes, Will.
That's gonna be a week-long session right there. Yo, what's on your mind? You might still be muted.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Thanks for the information. Good bit of stuff. I'm going to have to go back and look at the recording again, because you were like machine gun there, trying to get all that good information out in a short period of time. but all great. My question is specifically as relates to the Southeast and or Florida, because of the amount of wealth migration that's coming in Florida. If you're actively doing any ground up developments in Florida, from a GC perspective, what are you seeing in relation to timelines on the job, being able to complete the job? So, 10 years ago, if a job took 6 months, what does that look like today? Because that affects the carrying cost of the project. Number two, what are you seeing as relates to labor issues and shortages, and how do you mitigate that risk?
Okay. Depending on how you're going to go buy construction and set yourself up is really going to be timeline. Things do seem stretched today. How long does it take to get a transformer? Gosh, if you're multi-story with an elevator, okay, start planning. Okay. But if you want to take the attitude of a upfront, pre-planned, very targeted schedule component, I'm going to be recommending you're going to go in with a negotiated GC mode, and that GC is going to be in early. Okay. And that has an ability to bring that time in early, because I need to do pre-planning on our metal supplier. Okay. You've already got ideally them on board, when they're going to be producing. You've got all the state stormwater permits today that take so long to set up at the beginning of the job. You got all these components that if from a timing standpoint, I'd rather be negotiating up front the business terms and have my GC on board with a strategic schedule that's trying to tighten that timeline that you're bringing forward. And I can go on with that, but I'll probably pause there. When you talk about labor shortages in certain parts of the country, again, it's going to be in certain areas and how you're buying construction. I can tell you today, I'm in North Augusta, South Carolina, completing a conversion. I'm flying there Monday night. We have some subs that are suffering with manpower right now. And it was part of our GC's selection of who they brought to the table subwise. So in that early point that I'm talking about before we're onboarding and we're going through a lot of the contractual stuff, what's the health of each of those key subs that they're about to go into gauge with? What's their sub body count look like? What's their duration look like? You can get very deep into this pre-planning that ideally will vet out some of those concerns today. But I can tell you across the country today, I'm not finding a lot of labor shortage today. I'm finding a lot of really strong subs and a lot of really weak subs today. And that comes across from people power as well as their strength, their buying power as a sub today. We've had those issues over the years and they cycle. Hopefully I gave you some answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I've got a follow-up question. What are your thoughts on design build?
Well, that was my bread and butter for over 2 decades. Okay. I'm a huge believer in it, but I'm going to start with the idea of you're going to choose a design build contractor, know them inside and out. That relationship piece is big up front. The amount of vetting, visit 5 of their jobs, talk to 10 of their clients, know them inside out, know the people that's going to be on your team, expect the A team. Do not settle with the C team, with all due respect, period.
During that vetting process, is there any concern for like bid fatigue? I mean, we're kind of going through that right now, and you want to be taken seriously, and you're maybe shopping several or more GCs. How do you handle that in a professional manner, but also kind of, you want to know who they are, cover your butt, get a good price, but find someone professional?
That's a great question. And it gets into a variety of subs. I can tell you today, remember certain times of our last 25 years on how busy we've been when steel is good for 15 days, okay? Or you got a steel number for 5 days. Those things start coming into deal fatigue. If you've got a project that you're going to bid and you don't think you're going to start for 6 months, you're going to start creating deal fatigue for yourself. So the timing of when you're going to go to market and you're talking to the GCs about it needs to be strategic. You got 6 months of permitting still. You may be going out and spending time on the interview process and do like a soft bid, but you're not having them go to the market yet. It's a little bit of the art of the deal, Carrie, in regards to that, but you're spot on. That needs conversation and some strategicness on your scheduling, or else you'll get deal fatigue. Although, today, as you know, commodities are pretty flat right now. Okay, hold on to your hat, it'll change. The steel letters will be out in March again. Okay, but there you go.
If you have time for one more. So my transition from residential construction to commercial construction, I started looking at GCs. General conditions was one of those boxes that I just couldn't. I couldn't unwrap and get my head around. Can you talk a little bit about what we should expect in the GCs? Because it surprised me how different it was GC to GC, right? And just trying to understand that, because it's a big number. And if it's just wrapped into one line item and you don't have a transparency of it, it can be a little scary.
First of all, there needs to be transparency. The first thing is anything that goes out, I want transparency of everything that's in the general condition package. Then I'm going to start comparing that to other people. The key in GCs is mostly all manpower. Okay. They're going to staff it, what they're going to bill weekly and monthly. GCs today, we used to be 25 grand a month on GCs. Today, on a typical job, you can be $45,000 to $55,000 a month in GCs. And then what's in it? Where's their insurance? Do they have their tools in there? Is that another line item? So Will, to your point, it's all transparency to understanding it. And each of you should have a real understanding of what that goes into it and how you're looking at it. Because especially when someone extends their schedule, are they trying to extend their general conditions by a percentage? Or what's going into that extended schedule piece? There has to be a lot of dialogue and openness to that, or else you get into disagreements right away. Okay. Hot topic. I could go on just a session on general conditions. Okay. But big topic.
So what I'm hearing you say throughout this entire conversation is the relationship with your GC can make or break your project.
Oh gosh. Big. Yes. Yeah. They are a huge, biggest part of the team. At a certain point, design controls everything up to that point. You got a bad set of drawings, we're in a world of hurt. And if you have a bad contractor, the storm gets huge. Okay. So it's got to start good and continue good. Without it, you're going to end up like me.
Well, Bear, this has been super insightful, and I think we're going to have to schedule on for another call. There's something else here to unpack with your knowledge for sure. So Thad, we appreciate the recommendation, and Bear, we appreciate your time this morning.
I
appreciate it
here with all of you, and it's nice to see some familiar names and faces. So Thad's got our contact. If you want to chat ever, ring us up. We're totally open to having conversations.
Excellent.
I'll put the PowerPoint that somebody prepared for Barry to share today on. I'll put that on the base camp so you guys can go through it. It summarizes a lot of what he said very eloquently today. So I'll share that with the group.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Take care, everyone. Hope to see
All
you.
right.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Barry.
Bye, guys.